Thea was still in a daze. Everything that just happened was unbelievable. The hills formed a circle around her. Cyrus asked puzzledly, "What's going on, Thea?" "That was Richard Zenos we're talking about, the patriarch of the family. He's someone with assets worth hundreds of billions. Why was he kneeling before you?" "That's right, Thea. How influential are you exactly? Who's the one helping you out behind the scenes? Why did Richard Zenos seem so afraid of you?" The hills chimed in. Thea was puzzled too. However, she assumed it was the mysterious Mr. Caden working his magic in the shadows. She did not know he would be so influential that even Richard Zenos of North Kensington would be fearful of him. Phew. Thea took a deep breath. Her head was spinning. She did not want to think about this anymore. It's nothing. By the way, a word of caution here. Don't tell anyone about what happened today. He's the patriarch of the Zenoses worth hundreds of billions, after all. If word spreads, his reputation will be ruined. With the power and influence of the Zenoses, crushing us is just child's play. After warning them, she stood up to leave. Ads by Pub Future. Her head started spinning with just a few steps. James caught her in time. With James carrying her, she left the room. The hills glanced at each other. Cyrus, is Thea really that influential? That was Richard, the man capable of shaking the heavens and the earth, and he was kneeling on the floor like an obedient dog. It's unbelievable. Cyrus sat on a chair and lit a cigarette. Though he had met countless bigwigs throughout his life as a businessman, he had never seen Richard before. That was because he was not yet qualified to do so with the number of assets in his possession. He did not expect Richard to kneel on the floor and obediently fork over $2 billion. $100 million per glass. Truly terrifying. At that moment, he had a clear understanding of how terrifying Thea was. No, it was not Thea who was terrifying. It was the one behind the scenes. He had heard of her affairs. It was a Caden, a mysterious Caden, behind her back. Tell no one about today's incident. If word gets out. HMPH. Understood. I won't tell a soul, Cyrus. At the same time, Thea got in a car. She was drunk, and her head was spinning. She did not want to think of anything. Honey, do we return to the hill residence or somewhere else? In her seat, Thea opened her eyes and said, Forget it. Let's not go home. Just get a room at a hotel. We'll go home tomorrow. Got it, James replied. Then, he pulled out his phone and searched for a nearby hotel. He drove toward the location. Soon, they arrived at a 5-star hotel. After parking the car, he got off the driver's seat and opened the passenger door. Then, he helped Thea down. Thea was drunk. Her cheeks were flushed, and there was not a single ounce of strength left in her. She collapsed into James' arms the moment she got off the car. The alluring fragrance tickled James' nostrils and greatly stimulated him. His arm wrapped around her slim waist, and his heart was pounding. With his arms around Thea, he made his way to the hotel's entrance. Not far away, a group of drunk, young men were walking over. They were bellowing tunes. Dylan, look, over there. Upon seeing James helping Thea toward the hotel entrance, one of the young men quickly regained his senses and exclaimed while pointing at Thea. Hearing this, the rest of the group turned to look. They were stunned. Exquisite. What a fine woman. They had never seen such a stunning beauty. Dylan, it seems like the beautiful lady has had too much to drink. And look at that guy in ordinary clothes. There's no way he's a rich guy. He must have picked her up on the streets and planned to get a room at the hotel. We shouldn't let him get away with it. Dylan Nell, 30 years of age and unemployed. He wandered through all sorts of bars and entertainment districts. Along with about 50 honchos, he conducted businesses like extortion and ransom that skirted the edges of the law. Today, he and his honchos had just come out from a bar. Upon seeing Thea, their eyes were peeled to her. They were experienced at waiting outside of bars to pick up beautiful ladies who were drunk and then getting a room in a hotel somewhere. After that, they would record the process and extort money out of their victims. They knew what was going on when they saw James together with Thea. This guy has quite some luck to get his hands on such a fine woman. With a greedy look, Dylan ordered his men, "Go get them. Beat the guy up and grab the woman." Yes, the honchos were thrilled. Such an exquisite woman. After Dylan had a taste of her, it would be their turn. Just as James and Thea reached the hotel entrance, a few hooligans approached and stopped them in their tracks. One of them whistled and looked at James with a mischievous grin. "Hey, kid, I'm warning you. Put the woman down, kowtow to us, and we'll let you off the hook. Or else, we'll beat the hell out of you." Dylan was dissatisfied. "What are you dilly-dallying for? Go get him already." James looked at the approaching Dylan. He looked 30 years of age and wore a black vest. He had long hair and a golden necklace around his neck. He had a green dragon tattoo which made him look much more intimidating. Ads by Pub Future. The dragon tattoo alone would unnerve many. "Get lost." James' face darkened. Thea was still barely conscious. She opened her eyes and saw the men blocking their path. "What's going on, honey?" She spoke with a sultry voice. It was smooth and alluring. "I'm here, honey," a man said with a laugh and walked toward her. James lifted his leg and kicked him. He went straight for his crotch. "Ah!" The man clutched his crotch and cried out in pain. Then, he collapsed to the ground and lay there motionless. "Get him!" Dylan yelled. His men immediately pulled out their daggers. One of them slashed at James. However, before he could even approach him, James grabbed him by the arm and twisted it. Crack! His wrist fractured, and the thug cried out in pain. The dagger in his hand fell to the ground. James went on the offensive. In the blink of an eye, all of them had collapsed to the ground. Fearful, Dylan took a few steps back. With Thea leaning onto him, James walked toward Dylan. Thea spoke in a feeble voice, Don't fight, honey." James stopped and glared at Dylan. "Scram. I'll remember you. How dare you beat up my men? Just wait. You are a dead man." Seeing his men lying on the ground, Dylan left a threat and made his escape with his tail tucked. He only returned after James had entered the hotel. His honchos had already gotten up from the ground. "Trash," he cursed. "It's not our fault, Dylan. We didn't expect him to be such a great fighter." Dylan reproached him, "Investigate him. I want to know who he is. I'll definitely kill him." Dylan had been on the streets for many years and was acquainted with many powerful men. Getting his hands on James' hotel room booking record was a piece of cake. Soon, he learned of James' name. After that, they investigated further. He learned where James came from. Kensington. Dylan's face darkened. Then, he went to look for his boss. In a room of an underground gambling den in North Kensington, Dylan bowed and spoke respectfully. "Bryson, this is a great opportunity to make money. I found out that the guy who beat my men up is called James. He's from Kensington and is here to celebrate the birthday of a hill. The hills have assets totaling a few billion." A 40-year-old looking man sat on the sofa. His name was Bryson Cayazzo. He owned a few bars, KTV, and gambling dens. He was also a loan shark. "Have you looked into the hills?" Bryson asked disinterestedly. He had climbed his way up the social ladder by proceeding with the utmost caution. He would not target those he could not. However, he would utterly ruin those he could. "I have. The patriarch of the family's a retired veteran. There are also a few government officials among the younger generation. But, since they've injured our men, they'll have to pay compensation." "So what if they're officials? Will they be more influential than the one backing you? Besides, I heard James' wife is called Thea Callahan. She's an exquisite woman and is considered the most beautiful woman in all of Kensington." Dylan went on and on. He had looked into their background. However, he was currently at North Kensington. All information he received was based on rumors on the street. He had no inside knowledge whatsoever. He also had no idea of Thea's status among the aristocratic circles in Kensington. She was a woman no one dared to offend. Bryson nodded. True. Even if they're officials, can they be more influential than my boss? I'll tell my boss about this. We can extort at least 2 billion out of the Hills. I'll give $1 billion to my boss's respect. I'll also ask him to help us out in the shadows to pressure the Hills. Adds by Pub Future. How wise. Dylan immediately began sucking up to him. Bryson looked at him and said coldly, make a commotion. Break the legs of your men and go to the Hills and make a scene tomorrow. You'll be rewarded after this is over. Understood. I'll see to it immediately. Dylan walked away with a delighted smile. To him, the Hills were doomed. Back then, a few businessmen worth billions of dollars were bankrupted and thrown into prison after offending Bryson. At the moment, James was at the hotel. Thea collapsed onto the bed in an instant. As she was drunk, she vomited all over the bed sheet. James cleaned up the mess. After that, he removed Thea's clothes and carried her to the bathroom to clean her up. Thea regained her senses as she was soaking in water in the bathtub. Her entire body was submerged in the water with only her head above. She looked at James and blushed. James did not feel awkward at all. He gazed at Thea longingly as if she was a beautiful work of art. Honey, bring me a towel. I'm done showering. It's too hot in here. Her reddened face gleamed with sweat. Embarrassed, she murmured in a low voice. James brought her a towel. Thea said with a demure look, why you should leave. Honey, you're drunk. Let me help you. I'm your husband, after all. I'm not an outsider. All right. Thea nodded. She stood up. As she stood, her curvaceous figure was completely exposed before James. James could feel blood gushing through his veins. He almost had a nosebleed. Just as Thea was getting out of the bathtub, she missed her footing and fell. James reacted quickly and swiftly held on to her. He could feel her fair and smooth skin. Thea shivered, and her body was stiff. Even though the one embracing her was her husband, she felt uncomfortable and embarrassed. She tried to calm herself down. Thea, this is your husband. It's normal for husband and wife to have skin contact. She tried convincing herself. Only then did she relax her tense body. She looked at James and smirked. She asked seductively, honey, do I look yummy? Her words were alluring. James could no longer resist. Thea thought that her relationship with James was too monotonous. She started teasing James. She was not aware of how powerful her words were. The battle-hardened James was tamed just by a single sentence. James gulped. Why yeah. Blushing, Thea said, gee, get me out of here, then. James recollected himself and swiftly carried Thea out of the bathroom. He then placed her on the bed. Meanwhile, Thea immediately covered her naked body with the blanket. With reddened cheeks, she smiled at James. It's getting late now. We should get some sleep. Oh. James got onto the bed. Thea rolled over to another side with her back toward James. Though she had ignited the flames within James, she chose not to extinguish them. James was feeling uncomfortable throughout his entire body. However, he chose to suppress the urge. The night passed silently. Adds by Pub Future. James woke up early the next morning. Thea, on the other hand, was still sleeping. James headed to the living room of the presidential suite and pulled out his phone to call Daniel. He instructed him to order Chase to send premium cigarettes and wine from the military region to the Hill residence. After hanging up the call, he sat on the sofa and played games on his phone. Not long after, Thea walked out of the room. She was already dressed. However, her hair was disheveled. She looked adorable upon waking up. Honey. She rubbed her temples and sat on the sofa. James said, honey, it's still early. You should go back to sleep. Thea shook her head and pulled her phone out. She opened her text messages and stared at the notification the bank had sent her last night. James approached her and saw her account balance. Feigning surprise, he exclaimed, wow. There are 2 billion in there, honey. We're rich. Let's buy ourselves a villa when we return to Kensington, all right. Thea looked at James and rolled her eyes. Dream on. I'm using this to expand Pacific Group. With $2 billion, I'd be able to rapidly expand the business. Honey, yes. Aren't you curious why the Zenoses gave me money? James said with a smile. It's the mysterious Mr. Caden behind this, of course. He must have gotten word that Augustus was forcing you to drink. Enraged, he ordered Richard to kneel before you and apologize. Why aren't you mad, then? James replied. What's there to be mad about? With all these bigwigs falling head over heels for you, it can only mean that my wife's outstanding. I'm fortunate to have married you. Why would I be mad? HMPH, Thea pouted and said, if you continue being so unambitious, I'll dump you and go to the mysterious Mr. Caden. Please don't, honey. I'm doing my best. I even found a job. Oh yeah, I haven't told you where I'm currently working at. James pulled out his transgenerational account executive business card and said, look. I'm working as the account executive at Transgenerational Group. Thea rolled her eyes. Account executive. She knew what the job actually entailed. However, he was capable enough to land a job at Transgenerational. Transgenerational is a large corporation. You'll have to work hard. Understood, Mom. I'll work hard. So, promise me you won't dump me, honey. Thea pouted. That'll depend on your performance. I'm gonna put my makeup on now. She stood and headed to the dressing room. Meanwhile, James sat on the sofa and lit a cigarette. He was living the life. Soon, Thea finished applying her makeup. The two checked out and headed to the Hill residence. By the time they arrived, it was already 9 o'clock in the morning. Today was Thea's grandmother's birthday. Although it was not a grand birthday celebration, the Hills were an influential family. Everyone with a connection to the Hills was present. Only a few close relatives of the Hills were here yesterday. Today, however, was different. Everyone was present. Jedediah and his 4 sons and 2 daughters, as well as his nieces and nephews, were all present. The courtyard of the Hill residence resounded with laughter and joy. James and Thea became the subjects of discussion the moment they arrived. Everyone murmured about how Gladys' time had come and how she could finally lift her head high. Gladys headed toward them and reproached James. What were you thinking, James? How dare you stay out all night with my daughter? Thea hurriedly explained, Mom, it's not his fault. I drank a little last night. So, we decided to get a room at a hotel. Aunt Gladys, I treated Thea to a meal last night. Cyrus stepped forward and said with a smile, Thea couldn't hold her liquor and was drunk only after a few glasses of wine. It's not her fault. Only then did Gladys brighten up a little. At that moment, a police car stopped in front of the courtyard. Clinton's here. Everyone stood up to welcome him. Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. Long time no see, Grandpa and Grandma. A 25-year-old looking man in uniform got off the car and greeted everyone. Thea stood behind James and whispered, This is Clinton Hills. He's the captain of the specialized police unit and has great authority. He's the pride of the Hills. Ads by Pub Future. MHM. James gave a slight nod. Captain of the specialized police at such a young age. Impressive. Thea continued, My grandfather was a soldier and had countless protégés. I heard from my mom that some have made it to the head of the city police department. Some have even reached the county and township level. Not bad, James said nonchalantly. Meanwhile, Clinton, warmly welcomed by the family, took a seat in the courtyard. Everyone formed a circle around him. Jedediah and his wife were seated next to him. Clinton was the pride and joy of the Hills. Clinton, is your work going smoothly? Extremely, Grandpa. Besides, I have good news for you. Oh, Jedediah's curiosity was piqued. He asked, What is it? Everyone's gaze was fixed on Clinton. Clinton replied, Did you know the Blythe King is creating a special forces team? He'll be selecting 10,000 men from tens of millions from all military regions and specialized police units throughout the country. After undergoing a 3-month-long special training and passing a final screening process, we'll officially be a part of the Special Forces team. Not only that, the chief instructor of the Special Forces is. Guess who, Grandpa? Clinton built up the suspense. Jedediah asked, who? Could it be the Blight King? Upon hearing this, Mrs. Hill smiled brightly. Clinton, you are the pride of our family. You are about to meet the Blight King. Clinton shook his head and said, it's not the Blight King. It's the Black Dragon General of the Southern Plains, who had just been appointed general a year ago. As Clinton spoke, he could not help but get excited. That's the god of the army and the faith of all soldiers we're talking about. But, no one knows what he looks like. The Blight King told us we could meet him if we joined the Special Forces team. Jedediah was a veteran. Mrs. Hills also worked for the military when she was younger. Although they were retired, they knew of the Black Dragon's heroic deeds. Clinton, will you really get to meet the Black Dragon General? He's the god of war of Saul. Without him, the Southern Plains would have fallen a long time ago. I can't even see the Black Dragon in my dreams. The youngsters of the hills wore an envious look. Meanwhile, Clinton continued in excitement, I'll work hard and join the Special Forces team so that I may meet the Black Dragon in person. Rumors say his strength is unrivaled, and his medical skills are peerless. Everyone started discussing the Black Dragon. Only Zara cast a long glance at James in silence. Who could have thought the Black Dragon of their discussion was present at the scene? However, Zara did not dare to reveal James' identity. James had constantly kept a low profile and never brought up his identity. Soon, the family members of the Hills gradually gathered at the venue, and the villa became lively. At the same time, in the Xenoz's villa, Richard Xenos anxiously paced up and down in the living room. Last night, he had received news that the higher-ups were planning to suppress the Xenos when he returned home. The Xenoses were the number one household in Kensington, and they had plenty of family members in the military, police force, and even government departments. The person that notified Richard was a high-ranking military figure and an important core member of the Xenoses. He was informed that this was because Washington attempted to bully customers at the primary pharmacy yesterday morning but had offended someone of significant influence. Richard investigated the incident and almost fainted from anger after learning that the people Washington offended were James and Thea. He was unable to sleep the whole night. Many people were gathered in the villa's living room. Those present were core members of the Xenoses. Richard, think of a solution, a middle-aged man voiced out. A solution. What solution can I come up with? This is all because of your useless son. He could have offended anyone but Thea. Key was present, and so was his girlfriend, Juliana. Adds by Pub Future. He was slightly puzzled. What's so special about Thea? Why can't they offend her? He had just met Thea last night. What's going on, uncle? Why can't Thea be offended? What does it have to do with the Xenoses? Yeah, what's her background? So what if we offended her? We're the Xenoses and aren't afraid of anything. Richard was about to die from panic, but the Xenoses were nonchalant about the situation. So what if we offended her? Do you know who Thea is? Zack called and confirmed that Thea's husband is the Black Dragon of the Southern Plains. General Nolan will take action against our whole family with one phone call from the Black Dragon if you offend her. His words caused a massive shock among the family members. Black Dragon. Thea's husband was the Black Dragon. Key and Juliana were also shocked. The infamous piece of trash was Saul's war god, the general of the Southern Plains, the Black Dragon. Richard, we've only one option now. Today is Thea's grandmother's birthday. Let's prepare a generous gift and immediately go to the Hills Villa to apologize to Thea in person. We'll be fine if Thea forgives us. Richard thought about it. Thea was the only one who could save the Xenoses. He figured out very few people knew about James' identity as the Black Dragon because he was rumored to be a useless son-in-law. Zack also mentioned that James valued Thea a lot, and everything he did was centered around her. Additionally, Zack also said that James was very low profile and did not want others to know of his real identity. Quick, prepare some gifts. I'll head to the Hills villa immediately. Richard had to personally visit the Hills to congratulate Thea's grandmother's birthday and beg Thea to forgive them in order to save the Xenoses from destruction. At the same time, in the military region, Chase had just finished sorting out some documents. He glanced at the time and immediately ordered his subordinates, prepare some premium tobacco and fine wine. I'm going to the Hills villa. General, do you really mean the Hills villa? An adjutant asked. Yes, the Hills villa. Don't ask so much. Chase glanced at the adjutant and replied. The adjutant nodded and hurriedly said, I'll go prepare them now. Also, General, would you like to go in a military vehicle or private vehicle? A private one. He doesn't like stuff too flashy. There were two purposes for his visit to the Hills: to return James' certificate and send premium tobacco as well as alcohol to him. Daniel had mentioned that his career would be over if James blamed him for being late. Although he was top-ranked military personnel, he only had a star badge on his shoulder. There were countless people who had a star badge on their shoulders. Meanwhile, James had 5-star badges on his shoulders. There were only 5 people in the entire country that reached such a rank. A 5-star commander could easily dismiss a 1-star general with just one word without having to notify the highest commander in writing. The Xenos and Chase were all preparing gifts to bring to the Hills villa personally. Bjorn and Bryson were not idle either. James had snatched the 1,000-year-old king of ginseng that belonged to him. Thus, Bjorn planned to take revenge on him. Meanwhile, Bryson wanted to seize this opportunity to extort some money from the Hills and, even better, make their family bankrupt. Before taking action, Bryson had investigated the Hills' background. The Hills had a lot of students involved in various fields, with the most influential one being the city police department chief. They also had many family members within the military, police force, and government departments. However, none of them had very high ranks in these fields. Meanwhile, his boss was in a position of high authority and the second most powerful person in North Kensington. The Hills villa courtyard. Most of the core family members had arrived. Yitzchak and the old lady of the house sat in front. The banquet had not begun yet. According to the Hills customs, the banquet would only begin after the younger generations presented their gifts. Cyrus stepped forward and took out the gift he had prepared in advance. Grandma, I know you've been paying attention to your health recently. I specifically made a trip to Kensington and bought these health supplements at a sky-high price. Wow, is this a formula personally prescribed by Dr. Fallon? The old lady was dressed in a red festive dress. Although she was 80 years old, she lived a very healthy life and looked full of energy. She was surprised when she heard that the health supplements were from Dr. Fallon himself. Yeah. It cost me more than $100 million, Cyrus said with a smile. In truth, these health supplements were not personally prescribed by the genius doctor but by an old doctor. Jerry Fallon's appointments had been fully booked for many years in advance. It was impossible for him to get an appointment. Thus, he sought out a well-known doctor, gave him the old lady's recent body diagnosis report, and prescribed some health supplements for her. As expected from Cyrus, you've even met Drive Fallon in person. I heard it isn't easy to schedule an appointment with the genius doctor. Many rich people have tried booking with him but had to wait several years. Some didn't even live long enough to see him once. Cyrus Shaw is capable. Ads by Pub Future. Rigoberto has a great son. The family members began to praise him. The old lady smiled broadly and praised him, saying, "You are an amazing grandson, Cyrus. Thank you for the gift. Grandma, no matter how much money is spent, it's worth it as long as you're happy." Grandpa, I've brought you a famous painting. Another grandson presented his gift. The old lady's smile instantly froze, but she still nodded to acknowledge him. Following after, the rest of the Hills youngsters presented their birthday gifts. Apart from Cyrus' valuable gift, the other gifts were too common. The old lady slightly nodded when they were presented to her. Thea smiled and presented her gift. Grandma, I've also prepared a gift for you. This is 1,000-year-old ginseng. It's Herbal Biotech's most precious treasure. With that said, Thea instructed James to open the box. James instantly opened the box. Everyone exclaimed when they saw the large ginseng. That's such a big ginseng. That would cost an exorbitant price. It would cost at least a few $1,000,000. What do you mean a few $1,000,000? I've heard of the king of ginseng. It's an unreplaceable treasure worth at least $1 to $200 million. Really? Does it really cost $1 to $200 million? Thea's company assets are only about $100 million. How could she afford to spend so much to buy Herbal Biotech's king of ginseng? The room began to fill with discussion. Everyone had doubts about the king of ginseng presented in front of them. Thea, are you seriously trying to deceive Grandma with a counterfeit? The person that spoke was Clinton Hill, who was currently a captain of a police unit. He knew that Thea's family had hit the jackpot. Thea had some money and even purchased a company. However, he knew that Herbal Biotech's king of ginseng was invaluable. It was not something that could be bought with money. Everyone glanced at Thea with doubt after hearing Clinton's suspicion. Thea, did you really bring a counterfeit to deceive me? You shouldn't take us all for fools, Thea. You couldn't possibly afford a $1 to $200 million king of ginseng. It's not something that can be bought even if you had money. That's right. I heard your family likes to brag and show off about things you don't have. Many people spoke up. They all felt that the king of ginseng brought by Thea had to be fake. Grandma, this is real. I bought it at the Herbal Biotech auction house. Herbal Biotech gave it to me. This is absolutely real. Everyone laughed as soon as they heard Thea's explanation. They gave it to you. Who do you think you are, Thea? Don't you know what kind of existence Herbal Biotech is? Why would they give it to you? Everyone glanced at her in disbelief. They were unaware that Jay Fallon had stood up for Thea at Una's birthday party, nor did they know that Thea was now a figure that no one dared to offend in Kensington's upper-class circle. They were not qualified to be upper class. Thus, they did not have access to information about such things. Thea panicked as they questioned her. She glanced at James and said, "Honey, help me explain quickly. This king of ginseng is the real thing." James said indifferently, "The truth shall prevail, so why bother explaining? Since Grandma thinks it's fake, we can take it back and use it ourselves." James did not intend to explain anything. There was nothing to explain. Seeing that James was not explaining, the Hills were more convinced the king of ginseng was fake. The Hills members besieged Thea, and all kinds of nasty words were thrown at her. Gladys was ashamed. They could have gifted anything. Why did they have to present something fake? From her perspective, Thea definitely brought a counterfeit product because of James. She stood up and scolded, "What is your problem, James? Why did you make Thea bring a counterfeit product?" Gladys swung her arm at James. James instinctively dodged it and explained, "Mom, that's nonsense. Even if the others don't believe Thea, how can you not trust her?" "Mom, stop it." Thea promptly pulled Gladys away. Cyrus stepped forward. "Grandma, elders, this probably isn't fake. Last night, he had witnessed the head of the Xenoses kneeling to Thea. How could such an influential person present a counterfeit product?" The youngsters that were present at the scene last night all began to speak up for Thea. "You youngsters don't understand anything. Why are you interrupting?" An elder reprimanded them, and they immediately stopped talking. Ads by Pub Future. Thea, Cyrus' father, also Jedediah's youngest son, Rigoberto, stepped forward. He glanced at the ginseng placed on the table and said, I've seen countless valuable medicinal materials. It's obvious at first glance that this ginseng is not real. It's synthetic. Where did you get this ginseng from, Tia? Have you been deceived? Since Rigoberto had spoken, everyone was sure that it was fake. Rigoberto was the richest and wisest one in the hills. If he said it was fake, then it must be. Dad, this should be real. Before Cyrus could finish speaking, Rigoberto glared at him. He swallowed the rest of his words and immediately shut his mouth. The king of ginseng is real. Christine Fallon gave it to me at Herbal Biotech. Faced with the family's doubts, Tia was saddened. She generously gifted her grandma and valuable ginseng to make her happy. Instead, they were accusing her of bringing a fake gift. Who do you think you are, Tia? Do you really think you're somebody after acquiring a lousy company? It's impossible for you to be gifting something worth a few $100 million as you please. Tia's uncles and aunts kept bashing her. Even Gladys joined them and scolded James. James did not refute them. He silently walked aside, took out his phone, and called Jake. Your granddaughter, Christine, is in North Kensington, right? Ask her to come over to the Hills Villa and explain the situation regarding the king of ginseng. Jake, also called Jay, received the call from James and did not dare to neglect the matter. Immediately, he phoned Christine. Jay did not expect Christine to have investigated Tia's whereabouts in North Kensington yesterday and learned about her agenda of celebrating her grandmother's birthday. Christine knew that her grandpa was respectful toward Tia. Thus, she wanted to use this opportunity to get acquainted with her. She was almost at the Hills Villa when her grandfather called. What? Explained the king of ginseng. The Hills are accusing the king of ginseng of being a counterfeit. Christine was stunned. She hurriedly replied, Grandpa, I'll be at the Hills Villa very soon. I'll rush there as soon as possible. She hung up the phone and instructed the driver to speed up. A few minutes later, she appeared at the Hills Villa courtyard. The whole family surrounded Tia in the courtyard and accused her of bringing a counterfeit product. Meanwhile, the old lady had a very dissatisfied expression. She was disappointed with her granddaughter for refusing to admit her mistake. That's enough. Everyone shut up. The old lady spoke. Everyone immediately held their tongues. The old lady pushed the king of ginseng from the table to the ground and scolded her with a displeased expression. Tia, take your fake ginseng and get out of here. Also, Gladys, you better parent your daughter properly. Don't keep embarrassing yourselves. Yes, Mom. Gladys did not dare to rebuke her. Why are you still standing here? Haven't you been embarrassed enough? Hurry and go. Gladys glared at James and scolded him. Who said it's fake? Just then, a voice sounded. The crowd turned toward the voice. A tall, slender woman in a white dress walked over. Who? Everyone was stunned. Who was this woman? Jedediah, the head of the Hills, stood up and greeted her. Young lady, who might you be? He asked. The woman that appeared was Christine. She glanced at the king of ginseng that was shoved to the floor, walked over, and picked it up. I'm Christine, the granddaughter of Jay Fallon from Kensington, and also the person in charge of Herbal Biotech. This is indeed the king of ginseng from Herbal Biotech. I'm the one who gave it to EMS. Tia, are you all accusing this king of ginseng that costs $150 million to be fake? She glanced at the crowd. Dozens of people were present at the scene. However, it was dead silent. Why would the person in charge of Herbal Biotech suddenly appear in the Hills Villa? James was also slightly surprised to see Christine arrive so soon after he had just made the phone call. She came incredibly fast. Can she fly? Thought James. Ads by Pub Future. EMS. Tia. Christine approached Tia with a smile on her beautiful face and greeted her. EMS. Fallon. Tia greeted back. She did not expect Christine to appear at the Hills Villa. With Christine's appearance to verify the ginseng, the members of the Hills instantly shut up and exchanged glances. No one dared to speak. The old lady stood up with doubts on her face. Are you really the granddaughter of Dr. Fallon? She glanced at Cyrus for confirmation. Cyrus, didn't you see Drive? Fallon in Kensington. Is this his granddaughter? Quote. Cyrus looked embarrassed. He had never seen Drive. Fallon nor knew his granddaughter. However, he was sure that this woman was the granddaughter of Dr. Fallon and the person in charge of Herbal Biotech. He nodded. Yes. Rigoberto stood up, stretched out his hand, and smiled. Fallon. Nice to meet you. I'm Rigoberto, the chairman of R&F Corporation. Christine glanced at him and said nothing. Rigoberto looked awkward. King of Ginseng, this is a real king of ginseng. With even Rigoberto affirming Christine's identity, the old lady exclaimed and looked at the king of ginseng with delight. David stepped forward and said, I already told you guys Thea brought the real deal, but you all refused to believe her and even scolded her. Apologize to my sister. The Hills members exchanged glances. The old lady reprimanded them, why aren't you all saying anything? Quickly apologize. The family members finally apologized. Thea, I'm sorry for misunderstanding you. Thea, I also falsely accused you. I hope you don't take it to heart. Thea, it's just a misunderstanding. It's understandable that you all didn't believe me. After all, this is a priceless king of ginseng. Thea waved her hands and replied. After solving the misunderstanding, Christine also presented her gifts to the old lady. They were all invaluable supplements that were great for the body. The old lady was thrilled and could not stop smiling. Lastly, Christine took out a card and handed it over. This is a Herbal Biotech VIP card. With this card, you won't have to make an appointment to see my grandfather. My grandfather has only given out a dozen or so cards to others. All the Hills members were excited to hear this. A Herbal Biotech VIP card was an incredibly generous gift. Christine smiled at Thea, exchanged a few words, and left. There was no need for her to stay any longer after delivering the gifts. After she left, the Hills were still surprised by Christine's gifts. Wow, it's so lively here. A strange voice sounded in the courtyard less than 10 minutes after Christine left. Everyone turned to the sound and saw an older man dressed in a suit outside the Hills villa with hundreds of people. The person who appeared was Bjorn. James had ignored him and competed for the 1,000-year-old king of ginseng at the auction. The 1,000-year-old king of ginseng was crucial for the medical conference in Kensington. He needed this 1,000-year-old king of ginseng to defeat Jay and win the title of Genius Doctor. He reached out to a prominent family in North Kensington, the Yoders. The Yoder's status in North Kensington was only second to the Zenoses and was considered a big household. Bjorn had once won the Genius Doctor title and was the surveyor of the head of the Yoders. A day ago, he spoke about the incident of the king of ginseng that had happened. The Yoders immediately expressed their support to Bjorn to get back the king of ginseng. Cooper, the eldest son of the head of the Yoders, personally accompanied Bjorn to the Hills villa. With them was a gangster boss that Bjorn found from the underworld. His name was Conan Stone. In his earlier years, he used to mingle around in the underworld. Nowadays, he was doing legal business and had opened a security company in North Kensington. The 100 people following behind him were all from his security company. The Hills were stunned to see Bjorn, Cooper, and Conan approaching. James frowned and muttered to himself, why is this old guy here? Ads by Pub Future. Thea began to worry. She recognized this person. He had some conflict with James at the auction last night, so it was evident he did not come with good intentions. She took James' hand and wore a worried expression. Honey, it's all right. Let's see what happens first. James comforted her. The head of the Hills, Jedediah, stood up and greeted him with a smile. Who might you all be? Cooper. Rigoberto recognized one of them. This was a bigwig who had a net worth of tens of billions. Although Rigoberto had never seen him personally, he was in the business industry and had heard of him before. Cyrus also recognized him but never expected such a big shot worth tens of billions to come to a small place like the Hills Villa. Isn't this the boss of Sentinel Security, Kanan? Rigoberto also identified one of them. Isn't that Bjorn? Who's Bjorn? Bjorn Truman. He is called the Doctor of Wonders. His medical skills are on par with the genius Dr. Drive. Fallon. He is also recognized worldwide as a talented doctor. The identity of the sudden visitors were revealed one by one. The old lady heard the crowd's discussion and smiled happily after learning that these were bigwigs. Thank you all for coming to celebrate my birthday. It's an honor. The old lady also went to greet the guests. However, when she came near to them, she was immediately blocked by the accompanying bodyguards. Bjorn's face darkened, and he mocked, "Celebrate your birthday. Old hag, you think too highly of yourself. I'm here today to resolve a conflict." Huh. The old lady's face froze. Conflict? What conflict? What kind of conflict does the Hills have with you? Jedediah could not help but ask. Rigoberto stepped forward and said with a smile, "Drive. Truman, Mr. Yoda, Mr. Stone. Nice to meet you three today. My name is Rigoberto. I'm Thay." Before he could finish speaking, an accompanying bodyguard kicked him away. The bodyguard's leg landed directly on Rigoberto, and he fell to the ground. At this moment, the Hills realized that these guests were not here to celebrate any birthdays but to cause trouble. They were all confused as to how anyone from the Hills had offended these bigwigs. Bjorn pointed at James and said indifferently, "Brat, come here and kneel. Admit your mistake immediately." Everyone turned their gazes toward James. Now, everyone understood. It was the ignorant James who had offended these bigwigs. James approached them step by step under the crowd's gaze. With a nonchalant expression, he said, "It's you. Why are you here? I advise you better leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, you'll regret not being able to leave later."